Welcome to the Fit Fanatics. Today I'm joined with Michelle Vasquez. How, Michelle? How are you?
Great. How about you?
I'm fantastic. And let me tell you, I'm excited because our topic today is exploring the power of resilience. And Michelle, I first heard your story on Worth Repeating on Texas Public Radio. And true to its name, your story is definitely worth repeating. And that's why I want to get right to it. So let's get started, Michelle. Tell me about this stalker at the bus stop, please.
Oh my God. Well, I was living in San Francisco at the time. And actually, I was living in Palo Alto at the time. And I decided that I would get an internship in San Francisco. So I had to commute every day. And, I'm from a really small town in Texas. And so I grew up kind of being wary and cautious about living in the big city. So I noticed on this one day that I was taking the bus that this guy was kind of looking at me. And he wasn't just looking, he was really staring. And so every time I looked up, he'd be looking at me. And every time I looked up, he'd be looking at me. And so it made me feel very uncomfortable because he looked older. So I decided I was going to get off the bus. Well, as I exited the bus, he followed me. And he got off the bus. So then I started walking faster and he started walking faster. So then I crossed the street and he crossed the street. So then I ran.
Oh, man.
I ran to work because I was so scared. There had been a lot of stalkings in San Francisco at the time. So I was really pretty shaken up. So I got to work and I told all my friends and, they were like, be careful, we'll walk you to the bus stop. And it was just really scary. Well, I came to find out that week that I got invited to this party on campus. And when I went to the party, who is in the middle of the living room but the stalker?
Oh, no.
And his name was Drew Erickson. I came to find out. And what he told me was, he said, because I was very upset and I kind of read him the riot act. Ooh. And he goes, wait a second. He goes, you don't realize it. But first of all, I go to the same school you go to. I go to Stanford. And he's like, and second of all, you got off at my stop.
Ah.
So he's like, I don't know who was stalking who, but I was definitely not stalking you. I just wanted to say hello. And that day you had a Stanford sweater on. So I figured it was probably a good chance that you also went to Stanford.
So that was Drew.
That was Drew, exactly.
Your first encounter with Drew at the bus stop, feeling like you were stalked. So what happened after that?
Exactly. After that, we became a couple. He started giving me a ride to the train every day and the bus. And so we commuted every day. And we became a couple that summer. And we stayed together for a very long time. We were together in total for 15 years. Mm-hmm. And we dated. We moved to New York. We moved to San Francisco together. Mm-hmm. And during that time, he actually became ill. So when we were living in New York, he got a brain tumor and had to have surgery. And so that changed things a lot in terms of the nature of our relationship.
Mm-hmm. How long had you guys been married before he was diagnosed with the brain tumor?
We actually weren't married. We were dating. Oh. And so we had been dating for 2 years before he got a brain tumor and needed to go into treatment.
Michelle, were there any signs or symptoms before that, or was it kind of a shocker when you got the news?
No, it was really kind of a shocker. And the only reason we found out what was wrong is that he was at work and he had a moment where he forgot something. He just kind of blanked out for a minute. Mm-hmm. And nobody really thought anything of it except for one of his coworkers who happened to have epilepsy. And she said, I think you were having a seizure. Mm. And it wasn't the kind that had, strong and visible symptoms like falling on the ground or things like that. Mm. It was just he spaced out for a minute. Mm. And so in that moment, his coworker came to him and said, I really think you should get this checked out. And he did. And that's when they found it.
So how did he share the news with you?
he called me and he told me he needed to talk to me. And when we met, he basically told me, he said, I have something to tell you, which is that I have this brain tumor and I'm going to have surgery. And, this is a scary thing. It's your life flashes before your eyes.
Michelle, at that moment, what did you feel? What did you think?
Oh my gosh, I just thought we're in this together and we're going to fight this thing. And we did. And we were very successful in that first effort because he did beat cancer for his first time.
Mm-hmm. So during that first time, he ended up having the surgery for the
He had surgery, he had radiation, the tumor shrunk. It did not appear to grow back. And so we thought we were in the clear, and we decided we'd get married and went to San Antonio. Actually, we came here to San Antonio to get married at the St. Joseph's Church.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, it was a surreal experience just to go through a life or death situation, and then to have the gift of life again.
Mm-hmm. So essentially, not only coming together, a husband and wife, but also celebrating, as you said, life in general.
That's right.
So that was
That's
that's
absolutely
probably
true.
one of the highest times in your life, because after just, I can only imagine just the feeling, like, you've beat cancer and you're marrying this person, you're in it together, and you're so sure, you're so confident that he's the one, and you're meant to be together. Correct?
That is so true. I mean, we couldn't have felt more right. And I think especially after having gone through it together, he was really uh, the one suffering the most. He was the patient, right? And I was the caregiver. And to go through that as a team
Mm-hmm.
was an amazing experience that I wouldn't trade for the world. It was very fulfilling to do it together.
So then what, there's so many individuals, Michelle, that are placed in that caregiver role in the husband wife relationship. What makes what makes you feel that level of, like you said, compassion and just being there and patient when that relationship makes that shift?
I think it's really, you have to question yourself and ask you why you're doing it. And when you ask yourself that question, there are different answers that can come up for different people. Not everyone is the same, right?
Mm-hmm.
But for me, it was really just that undying love for a person and wanting to help them get through the most difficult of situations, because that was our commitment to each other.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that when you take those vows, for richer, for poor, sickness, health, all of those things, I think that while a lot of people go through those vows, that it maybe doesn't always hit you that means what it means, which is for the rest of your life through all of these situations. And even though you might understand that in theory, to understand the reality of life and death in a moment is a pretty incredible experience. And I think what I got out of that experience was that I valued those moments. Life is filled with a series of moments, and you can value them and appreciate them for what they have to teach you or not. And for me, the making it my reality to enjoy the little moments was a huge mind shift for me in terms of the way that I was leading my life.
So there you go. So before that, before the situation, even meeting Drew, marrying him, going through the brain tumor and surgery, being cancer free, how were you before this? Did you identify as a very resilient, very
I was a type A, do it all,
I
goal
see her.
oriented, have to, I have a pathway, get out of my way. And that's kind of the way that I was living my life. So I would say that I was living my life quickly, and that I was also living my life only thinking that um, goals were career oriented or tactical or not as meaningful as the just enjoying when somebody says hello to you and smiles at you. I don't think I appreciated those moments nearly enough until I met Drew.
Mm-hmm. So tell me, Michelle, after you guys got married, did you all, after getting married here in San Antonio, did you guys move back or go back to New York? What happened after that?
Oh, after we got married, we moved to San Francisco.
Okay. Oh,
And he had gone to graduate school and had gotten a job out there, and I followed him, obviously. And so we had this terrific lifestyle there. I mean, I don't know if you've been to the Bay Area, but it's absolutely beautiful. You're near wine country and the mountains and the ocean, and it's just it's a really idyllic world. So we felt really lucky to be there and to both have jobs and have all of the blessings that we had in our life, particularly since we know that life is fragile.
mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
And so I think that we were then surprised because we had been, I don't want to say taking for granted that he had gotten through cancer, but he went through a second bout of cancer. And so that was a little bit of a surprise for us and a little bit of a rude awakening, because it took everything that we had learned and kind of turned it upside down again.
Mm-hmm.
And we had to learn how to cope with that.
So how did you guys, what transpired when he found out that the cancer was back?
Well, we did the only thing that we knew how to do, which was just jump right back in and deal with it. Right. And we had the experience of having done it before,
Mm-hmm.
but this time was different because every time it's different.
Okay.
And so I think the main difference was that it was a lot more aggressive. The cancer was a lot more aggressive. So the treatment was a lot more aggressive.
Mm-hmm.
He had another brain surgery and had more chemotherapy. And, we were lucky that we were able to get through it a second time. And that was, you don't often get second chances like that. And so the fact that we got that was a gift in and of itself.
Wow. You chose the word gift in describing that, and that's for someone who hasn't been through that, or anybody who's listening that has not been through that. I think that they would be surprised to hear that word in that sentence, because everything you described doesn't sound like a gift, because when you love somebody, you're feeling as though, like you said, that person is sick and how am I going to help them? What can I do? What did you do, Michelle, this second time around that maybe was more helpful or beneficial for you and Drew going through it the second time?
I think what we did differently is we reached out for support.
Mm.
And we did that in a couple of ways. One, we joined a support group for caregivers and patients. And in those groups, you really get to talk about the good, the bad, and the ugly. And there's a lot of ugly. And just acknowledging what that is and knowing somebody else is feeling the same things that you're feeling and going through was just helpful emotionally to center ourselves. And then friends came out of the woodwork to help us with meals and with errands and with caregiving, because it's just like at that point, he required a little more care. And so I had a job that really allowed me to focus on helping take care of him, which was a blessing. And so just, having that support and being able to have some personal time for myself, as well as him to have some personal time for himself, was really important. And our friends allowed us to do that by doing these things for us. And that was a learning experience, to learn how to accept help.
Let me ask you, 1,000%, you're on the same page, because I was going to say or ask, was it hard to ask for help, much less accept it, but the process of just asking for that help as a high achiever, as a go-getter, as somebody, like you said, type A, like, we're used to doing everything the way we want on our own, taking care of it all. But in this particular case, Was it hard to ask for help, or were you at a point where you're like, you know what, life has changed for me, my mindset has shifted, as you said, and I'm recognizing that it's more beneficial, not just for me, but for Drew and for everybody else around us, that we do that?
Well, I think there's a lot of truth to that statement. I think there's two things. One is that what I learned from it is that you have to take care of you to take care of them. Because if you're lacking in something, you're going to be short, you're not going to be patient, you're not going to be helpful.
Mm-hmm.
But that I do think that asking for help was really hard for me because it was just something that I was used to. I was just used to handling my own life affairs.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that my friends didn't allow me to not accept their help.
Got it.
And in doing that, I got used to it and I realized how much wisdom there was in allowing people to help you. You know, it's a gift that keeps on giving, right? It's like they give to me so that I can give to him, and I give to him and he gives back to me, and then I give back to them. And it's a lovely circle. And I know that sounds kind of weird because it was a really terrible situation. But when you take the moment to appreciate what is happening and that people are just trying to demonstrate their love for you, like, I think that's what we all want. We all want to be loved.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So then what would you say to someone, Michelle, who's, has a friend or a family member in a situation where, similar to yours, where we want to help, but we just don't, know how or how to ask or what to do?
I would say, in the words of Nike, just do it.
Mm-hmm. Wonderful.
Like, if you just show up if you ask somebody, do you want me to make you dinner? They're going to go, no, I don't want you to go through the trouble.
Mm-hmm.
But if you just bring it by,
yeah,
and then you do it on a schedule according to what you can give,
mm-hmm.
then I think that makes it really easy to accept, because then you're just like, it's like when you pay for the bill at the end of a meal and everybody's fighting over the bill. Sometimes you just got to accept
yeah.
somebody else is going to pay for it. So,
I like that.
That's it kind of, by repetition and by reliability, you demonstrate to that person that they can totally count on you.
Mm-hmm. Well said, Michelle. Well said. Now, let's get into the ugly, because, I think that by talking about it, as you said, I think it enlightens individuals. And I am a person that believes that knowledge is power, and knowing what potentially could happen, and the feelings that could occur, and the mind, the mindset. What describe ugly to me? What does that mean?
Ugly is raw, and ugly doesn't have any filters. And ugly means that it's in this particular circumstance, we were dealing with death and not being together for the rest of our lives, and both of our dreams completely being upended. I mean, that is the reality of what we're dealing with. But you could focus on that, or you could focus on the time that you do have together while you have it. And that, I think, is really important. And that's something that I really learned from Drew, because he was always the type that was fully present for people. I mean, you never felt like he was focusing on something else or multitasking. Like, when he was with you, he was really with you, just like he was with me on that bus looking at me. It's just, he was really with you. And I think that I learned a lot about listening and about just being with people and letting them be whatever they want to be at that moment. And I think that is another gift.
Yeah, I agree with you. I think that that's a skill set that a lot of individuals don't possess, because it is very challenging, because our tendency is we want to do, or we want to say, or we want to think, and sometimes the complete opposite is the more appropriate, not just for the other individual, but for yourself.
Yeah, and I think that's a good point. I mean, I think that, we naturally want to fix things, but some things cannot be fixed. Mm-hmm. And I think that is, again, part of the ugly. It couldn't be fixed. We knew what we were dealing with, and so we had a choice of either making the best of a bad situation or not.
Or not, right? Exactly. You
And,
both
and
had a choice. You both had a choice.
we did have a
Did you ever
choice.
talk
Yeah.
about that, or was it
Yeah,
understood?
we did.
Mhm.
We did. And we just enjoyed each other. And we found ways to be together that we had not previously discovered. We were with each other in very different ways.
Mhm. Mhm. So Michelle, he had the first bout of cancer, had this surgery, and then the cancer came back, like you shared. What happened after that? After that second time he did, like you said, he had surgery again. What
Yes, well, having gone through that process, it is definitely a process.
happened?
And so we had to wait 5 years to get a final diagnosis of whether he would recover or not.
Okay.
And so on the date that we got the good news, he actually had a stroke. And when he got the stroke, he again, life was upended, and he ended up in a much more serious situation than he had been in the previous two times. So he became disabled in terms of being able to walk completely without assistance, and so he was in a wheelchair. He couldn't move his arm. It was pretty dire. He lost part of his speech, and so that changed our lives dramatically, even more than we had thought was possible.
Mhm.
And again, we made the best of the lemons, by making lemonade, because we ate meals together, and we went out on dates, and we got dressed up for each other,
Mhm.
and we created a normal situation out of what was abnormal.
Mhm. Why do you think you guys did that, Michelle?
I think it was because it's just like he loved me and I loved him. And I like to say that I watched him suffer and he watched me watching him suffer. And that was the loving action that we both took to take care of each other.
Mhm. Mhm. Did you guys talk about during that time the potential if something had happened to him, and
Oh, yeah.
so that was
Yeah,
an
we
open
definitely,
conversation.
yeah, we did. I mean, we knew that we would go to his doctor appointments together. And so we knew that he was dealing with a limited time
Mhm.
and that it was just a matter of time. So we tried some alternative treatments, which ended up being ineffective. But I think that just the act of being together became our medicine.
Mhm. Mhm.
I don't know if that makes sense or not, but
Well, medicine in theory is used to help us, right? To cure us,
mhm.
to get healthier. So I do understand that it was a way for both of you to sort of at that period of time, not necessarily heal, but have a baseline with one another.
Yeah, and we made the tough decisions, to get our affairs in order, our paperwork in order. Everything was in order in terms of powers of attorney, medical powers of attorney,
Mhm.
financial powers of attorney. What how he wanted to what he wanted us to do when he passed.
Mhm.
He didn't want a service. He didn't want to be in a church. He didn't want to be
Mhm.
in. He wanted to donate his body to science. He wanted people to learn from that. He felt that that is one thing that he could give back. And that was a tough conversation because um, it affected more than he and I.
Mhm.
It affected his family too. And so those were very difficult conversations. That was also very raw.
So Michelle, as a high achiever, type A, doing it all, going through these experience, and here we are, you're having conversations about, what can happen, what may happen, what will happen ultimately. Where did you grab your strength from? Who was your main supporter? Who was around you? Or was it a faith? Was it people? or what kept you going at that level of just resilience and strength and just this love that you have for Drew?
I think it was a combination of the love that everyone had for each other. And they say the sum of the parts is greater than the whole.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I loved him so much. He loved me so much. We both were in it.
Mm-hmm.
And we both knew what was happening. And his family came and supported us. My family came and supported us. Our friends came and supported us. Strangers came into our lives to support us. And it was, it's when you know that no matter what is happening at that given point in time, that it will end up being okay.
Hmm.
And I think both of us knew that for each other. Like Drew knew he was leaving me behind and leaving me in good hands.
Mm-hmm.
And I guess it's like, my spiritual faith has had me believing the same thing for him.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And so even now, I still talk to him. I do. And so it's like I may be by the copier at work and I'll say, I love you. And I know people are going, you love who? But it's really, when I think of him, I tell him I love him.
Mm-hmm.
And I still love him.
So after having the stroke, my understanding, you guys spent some time in the hospital. He spent some time in the hospital, and you were right there with him.
Oh yeah. He wanted me to stay with him in the hospital, but they wouldn't let us because it happened to be a Catholic hospital, and they felt that would be inappropriate to have family stay in his bed. But his doctor felt differently, fortunately. And Drew was a very convincing fellow when he wanted to be.
Mm-hmm.
And when he was tenacious, he was like a dog with a bone.
Oh, wow.
And so, he had that conversation with the staff and with the doctor. And he said, if you really want me to get better, then what I need is for my wife to be by my side. And so we shared that little bitty hospital bed.
Wow.
And, they'd come around for rounds in the middle of the night. And we did that for the better part of 6 months.
What happened after that 6 months?
After that 6 months, we went home and we had to figure out how to adapt to all of the challenges that he was going to deal with. For example, we had 2 flights of stairs. He was left-handed, but the handrail was on the right. So he had to reach over. He had to figure out how to walk up and down the stairs. So as an example, he couldn't feel the weight of his feet because that was just not something he could feel anymore. So when he would go up the steps, he would listen for when his foot would touch.
Oh, wow.
And that's how he would know. He would know by sound when to lift up his foot again.
Wow.
So that was a pretty incredible transition. It was incredible to watch and just to see his resilience in that and how he dealt with it.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So how long did, after he left or after he was in the hospital for 6 months, how much time did you guys spend adjusting to the new normal at that particular time?
I think that at that point, because we had been through so much for so many years, I mean, it was, literally 10 years that he was sick. And so I think that we just knew that we had to do what we had to do, right? There was not an option for failure.
Mm-hmm.
There was just an option for making the best of it.
There you go. Yeah. Yeah. So then ultimately what happened, Michelle?
So he did pass. He when he had the stroke and he had the rehabilitation, at a certain point, when we brought him home, it was clear that he was going to remain home until he couldn't.
Mm-hmm.
And that's basically what happened. So we lived our lives. We made it a point not to sugarcoat it and just to invite people in to our lives who could handle it. Because that's one of the things you realize, not everybody can handle it.
Mm-hmm.
and because it makes them more aware of their own mortality. And that's very uncomfortable for some people. So some of our friendships thinned a little bit, but for the most part, the people that stayed around were really solid.
You made a statement in your stories and worth repeating that said when Drew passed, it was a matter of you feeling as though he rescued you. What does that mean?
Oh yeah. What that means for me is that I learned to appreciate the small moments of life a lot more. And I could have lived a life without doing that because I was doing that. And now my life is so much more full because I don't really sweat the small stuff anymore. I used to be the stress monger, staying up all night, worrying, re-worrying, having the same thoughts go into my mind and rethinking what I could have said or what I should have said. And right now it's like I don't do that. I just accept things for what they are. And not that I'm complacent, because I'm not. I'm still very much a type A.
Mm-hmm.
But I have learned to slow down and to be more present and to appreciate every little thing that happens, like the smell of roses or water when I'm thirsty, or just the ability to take care of myself. That's like a huge thing. So I think having that appreciation makes me a more whole person. And I don't think I would have done that alone.
I feel at times when it comes to resilience and what that means for individuals is being resilient is can be tough, but it also is very powerful for us to know that when we are resilient, that we're capable of doing hard things. We're
Mm-hmm.
capable of doing hard things in life. It doesn't mean we have to do them all the time. It doesn't mean that we love doing them, but it means that we are capable of doing hard things. And as a result, we become resilient and we're capable to do more things in our lives and allow,
That is so true.
yeah. And especially as a high achiever as yourself, where, you already knew going into this situation that, you do things, you make things happen, but having that twist and things changing, you're still, as you said, still type A, still very capable, doing it, all the things, but with a different mindset.
That's exactly right. It's the mindset that matters.
Yep. Yep. So Michelle, are you a fit fanatic? Do you
I am such a
oh my
fitnatic.
gosh, tell me, how do you stay fit and healthy?
I love yoga, and that's only something that I recently discovered in this new year. I've learned that there are so many different kinds of yoga that work out different aspects of your spirituality and your physical being. So I now take yin yoga on Sunday nights and on Wednesdays, and it is just a pleasure. It is just such a pleasure. It really helps me center myself. It really helps me feel balanced, and it really helps me get through my week.
As a high achiever, right?
Yeah, that's right. It gives me that peace of mind to just let it all go.
Wonderful. Well, Michelle, like I said, I definitely appreciate your time today and you sharing your story because, once again, very much worth repeating so that others can learn that they have the capacity to be resilient and can get through the hard things in life. They can get through it. But as you shared with us, a key point is help. Asking and also accepting help can only open up the opportunities for us to grow and share. And underneath and all through all this, Michelle, is love. And I just appreciate that. And I thank you for your time today.
Thank you for having me. We'll see you next time.
All righty. Thank you guys for joining the Fit Fanatics today. We'll see you next time.